Hey Dee, this past week I saw our friend Mary from Minnesota on the virtual conference.
Yeah, that was the GardenCom conference, wasn't it?
Yes, and you know what? She says she listens to us every week and she talks back to us out loud, especially to you, Dee.
Why? Why to me?
Because when you say you can do something, she says, I can't do that in my garden, not here in Minnesota.
Yeah, well, I live a long, long way from Minnesota.
That you do.
Yeah, it's hot down here and not as cold in the winter. Although, was it cold at your house this morning?
Not as cold, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's get started. Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on several acres out in the country. Way too many.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do, and we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and a lot of times even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Dee.
And
how does your garden grow?
it's fine. We were supposed to get a freeze this morning, but it didn't happen.
Yay.
So I expect a light one tomorrow. I'm not really that worried about it. And my garden's fine.
So what a difference a week makes, because last week when I was said that I'd gotten frost, you were like, I would be in a panic. So you must have got a lot done last week.
I did. I brought in a bunch more stuff into the greenhouse yesterday afternoon, took some more cuttings. I found those seeds for Verbicina insuloides.
Yay.
And I planted them right before the rains came, but we only got 1/8 of an inch at my house. So I hope we get more later in the week, because next Saturday we're supposed to get some rain. And I wrote a post and I did a video, which I thought was kind of funny, on Instagram.
I thought it was kind of funny too.
People will just have to go look.
I'll link to it.
What's going on in your garden?
So the virtual conference, I wrote contest, but virtual conference last week sucked up way more time than I thought. So I did diddly squat in the garden, which is just a smidgen over nothing. I watered containers, I filled bird feeders, and Dee, I went out, I looked out the other day and I thought, that big Norway spruce isn't supposed to be all brown in the center like that. I was horrified.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens sometimes.
So I've looked it up, and it said it was either drought, and it has been extremely dry here, and they're very shallow rooted, or some sort of horrible fungus. So I scurried online to Purdue University Plant Pathology Department, printed off the form and the instructions for mailing off a sample, and they said they're out this week, but you got to believe that next Monday, a sample is going to go up to Purdue to see what's going on. It's bad.
Is it that bad? Like, is it going to recover?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it just looks bad in the center, and I've never seen that before. So,
Yeah.
And then we were supposed to have a big freeze last night, and I disconnected hoses and pulled up a bunch of radishes, but it wasn't that cold.
It wasn't that cold.
No, I don't even think we got frost
either.
So,
Yeah, I haven't disconnected all my stuff yet. I'll do it like when I know it's going to get in the 20s. When they tell me it's dipping into the like 32, I don't go ahead and unhook them yet, because guess what? After this little snap we're going to get tomorrow, which we're recording this on Monday, it's going to get 80 again.
okay,
So
yeah.
I'm not disconnecting yet, but I will pretty soon.
So it's really dry here, and they came and blew out my front yard irrigation. I thought, I really like to run that a little bit more, but it's done, and I'm like, I feel like an idiot getting sprinklers out after paying all that money for an irrigation system. But such as it is, I'm going to do a quote and get us started. No more whining.
Okay.
The leaf has a song in it. The song you heard singing in the leaf when you were a child is singing still. Mary Oliver. True that.
Yeah, I think I could put this on my wall.
We're all kids in the fall, and don't you just want to have a big old pile of leaves to jump into and remember that good earthy smell of a pile of leaves?
Yeah, I go walking around my property this time of year, and it smells just like that because they aren't paved. The pathways aren't paved; they're just mowed. And I walk through a bunch of different areas. There's a big sunny meadow at the top, and then there's trees all the way down, and Yeah, it's my favorite time of the year.
Very nice.
So we thought we would talk about with our flower. A lot of this episode is from things people asked me either on the blog or on Instagram or in garden coaching this past week. I'm still doing garden coaching. Growing tulips in pots was asked by Penny Pennington, and she's a lot more famous than me on Instagram. She has a nice piece of property that's semi-rural. I think she really lives in Edmondish. But
Right.
anyway, she's very popular. But she asked me about growing tulips in pots. I get asked about this every year. And so I thought we'd run through it.
Yes,
really
let's
quickly.
run through it. So the first thing to remember about tulips or anything in a pot in the wintertime is think of that pot as 2 zones colder than what you are. So your pots have to have things that would survive to zone 5, and mine would be zone 4.
So that's something to really keep mind of. And then somebody's going to ask us, well, can you wrap the pots in bubble wrap? Are you really going to wrap all your pots in bubble wrap? Do we even need to answer this question?
No one's wrapping their pots in bubble wrap. And you can if you have a cool cellar. We have a friend in New York who takes hers down into a cool cellar or up into a cold attic. But
Right.
depending on how big your pots are, let's say it together, that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. I'm not taking pots up and down into a cellar. Okay, so let's see. You said this might leave Carol's people out. Yeah, it might. I think it might, but it's really popular here. And here's why it's really popular in Oklahoma. There's a couple of reasons. One is deer. Everything loves tulips, right?
Uh-huh.
Tulips are edible. And so deer love them, squirrels love them, rabbits love them. The voles love them. So for some people, growing them in pots is for that reason. The other reason that I see people growing them in pots is they love Klaus Dalby's page.
Yeah. On Instagram, he is the container guy. We should link to his book because if you want to be inspired to grow stuff in containers, Klaus Dalby is...
Klaus is your guy.
Yep. We'll link to his book.
I want to point out 2 things about Klaus. I think he's wonderful, but he has a helper.
Yes. Probably more than one.
All those pots. He definitely has a couple of helpers, and he's been really good lately on Instagram showing that. And then the other thing I was going to say about Klaus is that he lives in the equivalent of what we would call Zone 8.
Yeah.
Zone 8A.
Yeah.
We don't live in Zone 8A.
No, we do not.
I live in Zone 7A, and Carol lives in
6A.
6A. So back to pots, if you want to try it. Squirrels, along with every other stinking creature on this planet, love tulips. You need to cover your pots with some kind of mesh or fencing like chicken wire, or the squirrels will dig them up. Ask me how I know this. And weigh that piece of fencing down with a rock. But you still got to water your stuff periodically. So mice love potting soil in pots too. And when you take stuff into the greenhouse, sometimes mice get into it. And also sometimes mice get into your tulip pots. And they also eat tulips. And Carol says, isn't it funny how squirrels can spot every newly planted dirt and know to dig there? Yes. How is that?
I don't know, but you do have to, you have to be careful. They know. So the other thing is, and this is what my problem was, the freeze and thaw cycle can cause tulips to rot. And the time that I tried it, I do believe that because I have a lot of freeze and thaw cycles through the winter, that the tulips just rotted. I mean, nothing came up, and you dug down, and it was just like, oh, that's not good.
There's nothing there, or it's yucky. I'm also going to think that you get a little more rain than we do in the winter.
Yes.
Normally.
Yes. And so the funny thing is, when I tried this, I always put a black plastic garbage bag on top of my pots to sort of keep the rain out, because if the soil's really wet and it freezes and thaws, it can crack a pot. And these are supposed to be all weather. So they still stay kind of moist under there, but that probably didn't help the tulip situation.
No, it didn't. Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. All right. So you might want to put, if you're going to do it here, you might want to put them in an unheated spot, like a covered porch, your garage, something like that. My garage stays too warm, so it doesn't really work. I put mine on the south side of my greenhouse, and I put hay bales around them. And I watered them up, but only occasionally. Okay?
Yeah. And if you had a cold frame, even here, I think if you had a cold frame and you have a south facing and you had it well insulated, I think you could probably put a couple of pots of tulips and be pretty successful.
I've actually seen people in your climate do
Yeah.
that, and it works great.
You can do that.
In my climate, it's too warm. That doesn't work either. Tulips like to be cool. In fact, they like to be cold. All right, so also, your tulips in your pots may disappoint you if we have a really warm spring. And in Oklahoma, we never know what kind of spring we're going to get. They might go over too fast, and then you'll be disappointed about that.
Right.
But, it's up to you if you want to try it. You can also grow bulbs that deer don't like daffodils, scilla, Chionodoxa alliums. Alliums, I get a lot of people, gosh, alliums are so pretty in those catalogs. And people write me all the time, oh, alliums, I put in alliums. And I'm like, I hate to rain on their parade, but just don't be surprised if after a really hot summer, your alliums don't come back. And they might, especially if you do the white ones.
Right.
For some reason, the white ones come back better than the purple ones. Okay, so I'm not saying don't do it, but just know that it may not work out perfectly, and don't spend a lot of money on it. That's my...
And I have a way to cheat.
Yes, I love your cheat, and I've actually done it before, but not on any of the stuff where I talked about. I just want to make sure people know that on the blog, I really did do those two.
Okay. So if you go to the garden center, the big box stores and stuff, in early spring, they have little 4-inch pots with a growing tulip or growing hyacinths or growing daffodil, which just has started to sprout. They're grown outside. I mean, they're ready to go outside. You can buy some of those and pluck those right down into your container, and it'll keep growing, and people will think, wow, you did that really nice thing. Look at you with your big bad tulip cheating secret.
Do it. I don't care. But if you're going to do that, you want to buy them where the tulips are just starting to emerge from the soil.
Right.
Do not go any past that, because they'll just flop over and die on you, which is a bummer too. So that's my thoughts about tulips in pots. And
that's my thoughts too.
If anybody else has some other ideas, they can go share it on the Garden Angeles Garden Club page on Facebook.
That's a great idea. Hit that next quote, Dee.
Beauty of style and harmony and grace and good rhythm depend upon simplicity. That is Plato.
That is deep.
And he's right. Yeah, it's deeper than I'm in the mood for at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever. All right, vegetables. Oh, this is really you. You came up with this one. When should you order seeds for the vegetable garden?
And you can actually order seeds now for the vegetable garden.
Sure.
And so I got a little checkoff list for people. They get a pen and pencil. So before you start ordering, the first thing I do is take stock of what you have left from this year, because most of the time that seed is probably still good unless you kept it outside and it got rained on. But if it was stored in a nice, cool location, seed is still good for most things. And that reminds me, you do want to keep the seed stored in a cool location. It doesn't have to be the back of the refrigerator, although that wouldn't hurt it. But just someplace where it's out of direct light.
Yeah, but then that's a whole complication too. I mean, the refrigerator.
Yes, it is.
Because you don't want to store it with, sometimes they'll get too moist.
I don't store in the refrigerator. I just store in a drawer.
I don't either.
In the sunroom.
Me too. Mine's in my drawer, actually in my kitchen. Go ahead.
I would say keep track of what you've ordered. You can get kind of rambunctious out there and excited, and you get this and that. And I know, Dee, what?
Surely not.
Yes. So, and I'll say, so don't over order. Keep it simple. And so, especially for newer gardeners, there's the temptation to try 20, 25, 30 different varieties of tomatoes. Just pick like 3 to get yourself started.
And don't especially tomatoes. I think you can really overthink those.
Yes, you can.
You know what I mean?
You can.
Because there's like a billion different
There
kinds. And I love to grow them all. So it can really be complicated. Okay, so keep going.
And then you can buddy up with another gardener, because most of the times when you get like a packet of tomato seeds or squash seeds, you do not need every single seed in there. Occasionally you'll get one that's a real specialty, and they'll say you're only going to get 10 seeds. But I'd buddy up with another gardener and then split the seeds with them, because it was the great Henry Mitchell that wrote, the mere fact that you get a lot of seeds in a packet doesn't mean you have to plant all of them.
Thank you, Henry Mitchell.
Yeah.
That's true. And then shipping is really expensive now. It doesn't matter whether it's trees or plants or seeds.
Or books.
It's pretty high. Or books, which we will talk about later.
So make your list and have it
So-
ready. So when the seed sites come out and say, hey, we got free shipping this weekend, or, buy one, get one 50% off, you kind of have your list to tick off. Now, one thing that just drives me crazy, and I'm not going to fault people for doing it because I think I know what they're doing, but they'll go out and they'll say, who has the cheapest of this green bean? Who has the cheapest of this tomato? And they'll drive themselves crazy doing price comparison. And I'll tell you, the more you buy from a single source, the lower the shipping, because they usually give you a break on shipping from ordering more. But I know people that they overcomplicate it by like, okay, I'll get this one here and that one over there. I better check at my local store to see what their price is. You're saving a quarter. You're saving 50 cents. I don't want to belittle a quarter or 50 cents in this day and age. But I say I go to my preferred one first, click down through and get everything that I can, and then I go on to the next one. So that's my other advice. Don't drive yourself crazy with it.
So, also, there's a famous quote, and I was trying to look it up, I won't get it quite right, but it was the great Bob Dylan who said something like this: "What is your time worth?"
What is your time worth? Exactly.
So think about that. And also, one of our favorite seed companies, Botanical Interests, has free shipping in October, so you should take advantage of it.
That's true.
And we have affiliate links for them because we really like them, for one thing.
We do.
And it does help us do this podcast. So here's the part that I don't and I also said I sort of take the May West approach to seed buying. I just throw caution to the wind and I order whenever I feel like it and I just get it and I don't worry about it.
That is another way to do it, Dee. A very sane way to do it.
Because more of something is often wonderful, except tomatoes. I have a giant sack of green tomatoes behind me and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with them. Anyway, so what is this part about right next to the fireplace is a terrible place to keep your seeds in a cute basket?
Because
who does that?
Well, nobody does that. I was just thinking about...
Is that like on Instagram?
Oh, probably somebody on Instagram.
Probably.
I know because I saw a picture on Instagram or somewhere, and I know. They had a houseplant sitting on a fireplace hearth next to a fire that was going. And I'm thinking, that's the worst place in the world to put a houseplant, right next to the fireplace. So
yeah, seeds too.
Seeds too. So the other...
Ripening fruit. Yeah. Anything but wood to put on the fire.
And I just want to tell people too that seed labeled for 2022, it's not like milk in the refrigerator that if you wait another month it's going to go sour on you. It's still it doesn't know that it's only good to 2022, and it'll keep for several years, and it will sprout in 2023 because it doesn't.
Yeah,
seeds don't have calendars that way. They will eventually dry out and not be very good, but not in a year.
Is it bean seeds? We once did a whole podcast episode on how long you can keep certain seeds. And I think bean seeds are the ones that go first. Yes. But believe me, it's not 1 year. And tomatoes are the longest. Sometimes they're 10 years. And you can always sprout them to be sure.
Yeah.
But yes, you can, of course, buy seeds right now to use for next year.
That's right. But don't put them in a cute basket by the fireplace and take a picture for me, because that'll just drive me crazy.
Yeah, do it. Drive her crazy. Would you like to do the next one?
I would. There's so much more to a book than just the reading. Maurice Sendak.
Oh, I feel so bad. This is The Garden in Autumn by Alan Lacey. And I insisted that we do this book because I said I've never read it all the way through. Carol, why did I think last week during the Garden Com deal that I was going to find time to read this book?
I fessed up that I wasn't going to have time to read it. So let me just say this.
I've read most of it. It's great.
I'm always tempted in the fall to go grab the gardening books that have a fall theme, like Alan Lacey's The Garden in Autumn, which was published in 1990. And there's a couple of others. E.A. Bowles has one, The Garden in Autumn or something like that. Maybe, no, that's this one. Anyway, there's all kinds of books written for this season. But I also am reminded that Henry Mitchell said, but fall, not spring, is the great planting season for woody things. If, in other words, you had thought of lolling in the warm weekends, admiring the chrysanthemums and the dogwoods turning red, congratulating yourself, perhaps that the weeds are losing heart, let me cheerfully remind you that you should be exhausted, not lulling, since this is the busiest of all the garden seasons.
Boy, when did you read him recently? Because Henry, you've got a lot of Henry Mitchell in this episode.
Well, I've always remembered this quote, and I went to go get it, and then the seed quote popped up, and I thought, well, that fits the other topic. So don't think that I've gone and gotten my Henry Mitchell books off the shelf and started reading through those. I have not.
Yeah. He's like a chunk. You know, if you're going to read him, you need a warm winter fire to sit there. And I don't think it's the busiest season here. Fall.
Spring is busier.
I think spring is.
Yes.
Spring's really busy at my house, and that's when everybody wants garden consulting, and I'm like, we're better off in the fall when we do it, because then you can think about it over winter, but I digress. This is Back to the Garden in Autumn.
Yes.
It was the first of these books written on this subject. I just looked it up.
Really?
That's what it says. And that's probably true. And I was trying to look up if it was a compilation of Alan Lacey's columns or if it was an actual book that was just written on the topic, and I don't remember. Anyway, I know it's really good. I love Alan Lacey. I think Henry Mitchell can kind of be bossy.
He can.
Alan is much more gentle and wants to lead you along, and he has a great deal of joy in his garden. And I always will love Alan Lacey because he found a sport of an aster in his garden. I almost said bum, but it's an aster. And he named it after his wife, Hella. And it's Hella Lacey. And it makes me laugh every time I say it because it sounds like I'm saying something bad. Hella Lacey.
I know.
But that's her name. Anyway, it's a beautiful aster. It has reseeded in my garden in a couple of places. It is very welcome. Unlike some of the, what is that called? Not fragrant asters. But the foliage, it's a scented foliage. I can't think of the word. Anyway, some of those asters can take over. Alma Potchke's one of them.
Yes, Alma can.
Alma's going to have to leave after this year. Or she's going to have to go be planted in the upper pasture because that woman is taking over.
Yeah, talk about bossy. So that is The Garden in Autumn by Alan Lacey. And we only have an Amazon link because this was published in 1990. So it is out of print. And when we put it up there, I said, Dee, the book when it was first published was $24 paperback in 1990. And I did the conversion, right? And that would be $58 today. I'm like, that's an expensive book. But used copies are not nearly that expensive.
No, you can probably find it for $11. It is worth reading, even though he lives in New York, because a lot of the things in autumn are the same throughout the United States.
They are.
Except for when we get one of
the
those crazy
feeling of autumn is there.
The feeling of autumn. And he will talk about things like what I just talked about, where, this aster's taking over, that aster's not. He talks about that kind of stuff.
You got the quote.
God uses broken things. It takes broken soil to produce a crop, broken clouds to give rain, broken grain to give bread, broken bread to give strength. And this is by a man named Vance Havner. And I looked him up because I was like, I've never even heard of Vance Havner. And he was a Southern Baptist evangelist from the hills of North Carolina. And he was very famous. It's just I'm not Southern Baptist, so I didn't know.
I didn't know either.
Anyway, love, love, love this quote because I think it's true.
It is true. It is true.
So we're going to talk about a bug in our dirt. And this is from my client, Susan, who I adore. And Susan asks me the most difficult, intelligent questions all the time that are just like send me off on very interesting things, and I appreciate it. And this is one of them. So this bug is called the hibiscus scentless plant bug. I have never seen it in my garden ever, but I wasn't really looking for it. And it's a really strange looking bug, and it looks really, really creepy, especially in the larval stage. In fact, Carol's making this horrible face because I don't know if she's looking at the picture or just thinking about it.
No, I'm not looking at it, but I should go look at it. We're going to leave a link to it.
You should look at it. You'll really make a face. So they look like small beetles when they're in their larval stage, and they cluster in a great big group. And before you guys get all scared, they've lived here forever, and they're not an import like some other bugs. And the reason Susan sent them to me is she was terrified that they were that other bug.
Brown marmorated stink bug.
The lantern fly.
Yeah, the lantern fly. Yeah.
No, the lantern fly.
That's bad.
And I said, because they were highly colored in their infant stage. And I said, no, that's not what these are. And I did some searching and looking, and I found it. And so the good news is they eat hibiscus, and they eat Rose of Sharon, which is a hibiscus. But they tend to eat it when it's done for the year.
Which is fine. Have at it.
Have at it. Enjoy that. You enjoy that dried up bud. So they also do a little bit of sucking in the summertime, but really they just don't have much of effect, according to what I looked up. And so we have some information from the North Carolina Extension, and it's a hibiscus scentless plant bug. But I'll admit it's kind of creepy. And so when I sent her back the information, she said, oh, thank God it's not a spotted lanternfly. And I said, nope, that's what this looks like. And I said, if you see one of those, you need to let people know.
Right. And that's a good advice. And if you see a bug you've never seen before, or you just don't know, it is good to go online to get it identified, or send pictures to your local cooperative extension service. And they want to know what's going on out there in the bug world. Trust me.
Right. And there are several really good groups with some experts, at least for Oklahoma, that also do plant ID, bug ID, butterfly ID. You know, if you get really interested in a group, you can go join one of those groups. And that's one of the best ways to use Facebook, because I think Facebook is the pits.
Yes.
All right, rabbit holes. We only have one rabbit hole this week, and I'm going to let Carol start it because she dragged me down with her.
Well, let me just do the quote.
Oh, is there a quote?
Yeah.
I am so sorry. Go ahead.
When life feels too big to handle, go outside. Everything looks smaller when you're standing under the sky.
By L.R. Nost, or Nost.
I am not sure what happened this past week, Dee, but into the midst of everything.
Oh, you're talking about a rabbit hole now.
Yeah. So I gotta say, it sort of relates to last week's rabbit hole, that Hornby Island, which led me to an author illustrator whose books are just the prettiest little things you've ever seen.
Yeah,
so
I'm staying away.
I don't, stay away. But we ended up buying these beautiful books that are illustrated by Marjolaine Baston, who is a very famous artist. I mean, she's mostly...
Oh my gosh, we love her.
She's known for Hallmark. I mean, she does a ton for Hallmark. And I just love her artwork. And so there are 6 books, and we're going to actually do a separate video to put on YouTube to explain these books.
I only have 3 of them. I bought 3, and then you went and bought all 6. Which, put out, for her is not a big deal because, well, she writes so many articles for Family Handyman. She's rich. So anyway, keep on.
So it's Andrews McMeel Publishing, which I think is based in Kansas City. And they put out these classics like Wuthering Heights, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, and the newest one, Little Women. And they are illustrated. The covers are gorgeous. They have little flower and illustrations on some of the pages that are done by Marjolaine Baston. And then they have ephemera that's stuck in them. So there's like a facsimile of a letter. There's a map of London. Yeah. A newspaper clipping.
Little, like as though you had stuck stuff in the books. I think that's what really, we first wanted them because it was Marjolaine's work. And each book, we should explain, is a different flower. Yes. So on Little Women, I don't have them right in front of me. Lift up Little Women. Is it hydrangeas?
I think Little Women is...
lilacs.
It's lilacs. Mm-hmm. And...
one of them is hellebores.
Yes, hellebores is Wuthering Heights.
Guess Wuthering Heights.
Roses.
Yeah. It's each one has a separate flower on the cover, and each one of them's a different color. So if you have a 12-year-old in your life, or women of a certain age, this would be a great gift.
Yeah, if you have
Women who have loved books.
if you have somebody that loves these books, I don't care if they're 88 years old or 8 years old. These are collectible books, and they are just,
And they're not that expensive. Most of them are $20 a piece. The most expensive one is Little Women, which just came out, and it's a much bigger book, and I think it's 40. But you can get them, and they would make a great Christmas present because they're wonderful. They have letters. They have stuff about the authors. And right now I'm reading The Tenant of Wildfell Hall through Well Read Mom. It's just a coincidence. And it's also a beautiful, beautiful book on the outside. And that's by Anne Bronte. And then this one has Jane Eyre in it. And it also has Wuthering Heights, which are the other two Bronte sisters.
so I am madly searching the internet to find out if Marjolaine Baston is working on a 7th book in this series. And I hope that she is, and I hope it's The Secret Garden. That would be killer.
That would be killer. And I actually told Carol she should write the publisher and say, please, please, please add this. So I love everything about it. I love the little notes.
Yep.
I love the drawings. I love the covers. It really is something, and I'm going to have to go back and buy the other 3. I just told myself I have to wait a month.
So
But now that I told all of you people, I'm going to have to go buy them, I realized.
yeah, because here's the thing about them is the older ones, they go back to, I think, 2017. And so we couldn't find those on bookshop.org. So they're probably just at, the remains of the day, so to speak.
At Amazon.
Yes.
So if you bought all 6, I think it's a $200 deal. Is about right.
No, it's
Isn't
less
it?
than 200.
Less? Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
no, it's close to 200 because I
it's
bought
right
one.
at 200 because I
it's
bought
right at
half of
200.
them. It was $100. So anyway, worth it. And then Carol also, it isn't in our little section, but this is the rabbit hole she dragged me down. And then also she kept showing me these pictures of other books that now I covet too, and I'm going to ask for Christmas. And those are those handmade books, and you'll have to, I don't know where they're from.
Well, it's Charles Van Sandwyck, and he's up in Canada, and he writes how to talk to fairies, or I don't have it in the notes, and we'll pop these up next week, and I'll tell you. But he tends to do them in like a run of 1,000 in handmade books. Those run a couple $100 each. But a publisher called Folio Society in London has special editions of these for less than $200.
And I like these because they have a bunch of Agatha Christie titles.
The Folio Society.
Where they got
be
me.
careful, Dee. Be careful.
Oh my gosh.
They have some really, really wonderful editions. And anyway, so they have several Charles Van Sandwicks. And mine are being dispatched from London and should arrive in 14 to 21 days. And then we'll talk about them on the podcast.
We can talk about them more then. But people will, when we get that link, anybody who's into gardening or mystery or just pick your thing, pick your poison.
Anybody that's into beautiful books, follow me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But bring
Carol
your
will
checkbook.
Just drag you down by your hair.
I didn't drag you down by your hair. I just said, oh my God, look at this beautiful book, Dee. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I need that book. And then, but here's the thing. We said, when your granddaughter is older, these are the kind of books you'll take down, and together you will look at them and examine the ephemera in them, all the pieces and bits and beautiful illustrations. And then she will want them someday. They're heirloom quality.
So speaking of Maddie, we might as well just talk about this. I hope y'all don't care. All right. So I bought her a book that I actually saw reviewed on TV, and it was called The Little Ghost Who Lost Her Boo. And I thought it might be too old for her when it came because it was for about 4 years old. No, it was not too old for Maddie, who's 2.5. I sat down with her and we started doing it, and I read the whole thing to her. It's precious. The little ghost, it's a Halloween book. Little ghost goes around the forest and meets an owl, a cow. I don't know what the cow's doing in the forest, but that doesn't matter. A pigeon. Anyway, they all make noises like who or boo. Get it? So they all try to give her their noise. So anyway, I'm not going to give it away, but it's adorable. And afterwards, she read through it by herself 4 more times and also did all the parts.
Well, you need to send me a link to that, Dee, so that I can put it on our show notes.
It is precious. It is a precious little book for Halloween and not too scary, just right.
So let's go ahead and do the garden commissions.
You go first because I talked about my boo.
So it's a big catch-up week for me in the garden. Frost is on the pumpkin. I need to go. I have no time for diddly squat now. I need to get going. So I'm going to clear off the vegetable garden, get rid of some rampant self-sowers, a little bit of deadheading. And then I have to go out and take a sample off that Norway spruce that's got that problem, send that off to Purdue and hopefully get an answer. And then it's getting to be the time when the bulbs are supposed to arrive. So when they arrive, I'll plant them. And the funny thing is, my sister called just about an hour ago and she says, I need you to settle a dispute at work. I'm like, okay. Is it too late to plant tulips? I'm like, no, I don't even plant mine until Halloween. It's not too late at all.
And I don't plant mine until Thanksgiving. So,
and I don't even have them yet, but I'm going to go to the greenhouse.
They aren't here yet.
I'm going to the greenhouse. They've got a bunch left over and they're closing up for the season. So I'm going to run down there and grab a bunch of them.
Yeah. So. My paper whites came though. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Why did they send me my paper whites now? Because, I'm going to force them indoors, so I don't really understand.
She also asked me about planting mums in the ground now. It's too late here to plant mums in the ground. So,
I mean, you could plant them here if you want them, but I always say that the ones that are all shaped and pretty, just put those in pots and enjoy them and toss them in the compost.
And one last thing I'm going to put in our show notes. I found a blog post I wrote in 2011 with 5 things you can do in October in the garden, and I think it's pretty hilarious. So
it still is pretty good? Okay,
It still is pretty good. I'm thinking, and a little bit on the hilarious side. So I'm thinking I'm going to put that on our show notes. What are you doing in your garden this week, Dee?
So I have down here that I was going to turn on the electric heat in the greenhouse. We did that yesterday because we were a little concerned. And I also said I was going to take a few more cuttings. Well, they told us it was going to freeze this morning, so I already did that. And then I did dig up my Salvia Van Hootii plants, and I brought some of the whole plants inside, and then I cut them way back because when you bring plants inside, you should cut them way back. And then I took those and I made cuttings. So this has been a really rough year in the garden, and what I would like to do this week, if I can talk Bill into it, is put the Netafin hosing in the cut flower garden. It depends on if we get a freeze. If we get a freeze and the flowers die, I'll do that. If we don't, I'll let the flowers go on a little longer for the butterflies. So just real quick for our listeners, if they have a drip irrigation system like you did, and you have an Instagram video about that, so we'll link to that. But that Netiform tubing, you leave that on the ground all winter long, but you do blow it out so that it does not have water in it. No, I don't.
You just leave it.
Blow it out. I just leave it. We don't have to worry about blowing anything out.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm replacing are, I know it sounds crazy, doesn't it? But you know what? Think about it. Our ground stays really warm. The other thing is people here don't blow out any of their irrigation systems. But what I'm replacing is my soaker hoses that are rotten in the cutting garden. Because I'm not anti-soaker hose. It's just these went rotten. And I mean, it's got to leak again. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, you need to fix that this week.
I will do my best, Carol.
All right. Well, that's it. We want to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelus. I hope you've hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 midnight Eastern Time.
If you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And subscribe to our new Substack newsletter, which is just really good. The Garden Angelus at Substack.com, also linked to in our show notes.
And at some point, Dee, we'll remove the word new and just say Substack newsletter. Anyway.
Maybe next week.
If you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
As usual, it was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.